Despite some controversial choices, the Mark 8 GTI is a phenomenal car for a somewhat reasonable price. And for 2023, you can get it in a 40th anniversary spec that makes it all that much better. So the 40 appears to be based on the S trim, but gets some niceties like the full-length LED light bar. For 2023, all of them are going to have the LED projector headlamps along with the accent lighting fogs. And to continue with the almost excessive luminance, you have turning lights as well. Now these things are not cheap. You're gonna start out about $34,000. I have it equipped here with the DSG and it is over $36,000, but you do get a lot for what you pay for. Again, the cool lighting, but also parking sensors front and rear, rain sensing windshield wipers, and all of the active driving aids, whether you like that or not. When it comes to style, the 40 is going to have special decals. It'll have cool wheels with a red ring around them, which may clash a little bit with some of the color schemes, and it will also have black mirror caps and a black roof. Unfortunately, it seems some dealers are marking up the GTI 40. Just like getting guacamole on a burrito, this ruins the value proposition of the trim. Thankfully, Royal on the Eastside in Bloomington, Indiana, the friendly, knowledgeable dealership I borrowed this GTI from, charges no markup and adds no dealer BS. If you want any VW, Subaru, or Audi, check them out and tell them thanks for me. I've grown to really like the styling of the GTI, and I think the 40th only enhances that. But that's all just an opinion. Let me know what you guys think in the comments section. I'm most happy to see that this generation retains a very iconic and practical hatch shape. On the interior, I appreciate the choices made by VW for the 40th anniversary, and I also think the GTI nails three main things: ergonomics, style, which is subjective, but also features. So here with the 40th anniversary, which is again based on the S trim, it's gonna have heated steering wheel, heated seats, wireless charger, virtual cockpit, automatic climate control, along with mood lighting and 7 speakers. It also has push button start, but no proximity unlock and lock. Outside of that, this is better equipped than some of the competitors' highest trims. I think for an anniversary edition, you gotta have the plaid seats. I like the red accenting put throughout the interior. Exclusive to the 40th, you'll have red stitching on the steering wheel with a red insert. And as a sidebar, I really love this steering wheel. It's just so meaty, the perforation is cool. Though the capacitive controls on the steering wheel seem like a concept idea shot around by an intern that VW forgot to remove. Thankfully, they're listening and getting rid of this in the near future. At least there is some haptic feedback. And the last thing I think this nails is ergonomics, which is kind of a broad category, so let's dive in. 1, the seats, very comfortable. They're mostly manually adjustable, but that does include a lumbar adjustment here built into the side of both the driver and passenger seat. Even though I'm 6'3", there's really nice long thigh support. The steering wheel comes out far enough so you can be tall and not have to feel like you're stretching out your arms. I do wish that there was like soft touch padding where my knees would rest, but that's not a huge issue here. And the other rests that you have are nice because you have an adjustable height for your center console. And then in addition, we have great storage cubbies that are well placed. You have a cup holder here that can actually accommodate a 40-ounce hydro flask. And you can actually adjust the cup holder size too if you want. And then you can also put the 40-ounce hydro flask in the door pocket too. The door pockets are lined with felt. The wireless charger area is large. There's a nice pocket here next to the DSG shifter. This gets a slightly different layout if you go with the manual, but overall, it seems like a very well thought out cabin. But the low point, you already know what I'm going to say. It is the infotainment system, which looks like it's borrowed its UI from Xbox. It just has not grown on me. And you also miss wireless Apple CarPlay and Android Auto on the 40th. But just as VW taketh, VW giveth volume and tune dials, something not found on high trims. There's also no capacitive sliders for the HVAC controls, which I applaud, but instead of giving you the real stuff, they just took them away, forcing you to use the touchscreen. At least the system itself tends to have a good response time. The resolution isn't too shabby either. They are known to be a little buggy though. It's just kind of a sometimes confusing layout as well, but I do like that it's very customizable. and it's kind of got a visually pleasing look, I would say, especially with the virtual cockpit. That's very configurable too. I don't think this feels poorly built, but the materials, when you start getting closer to that $40,000 mark, are a little disappointing. And there is just gobs of glossy black plastic that's going to get dusty, scratched, smudged. So there are certainly things that VW could improve, but overall, I would say that this interior is a selling point to the GTI, especially when we consider the practicality of it. So this has a very small footprint, but the backseat is still big enough to easily fit 2 6-footers in each row with comfort. It's actually not a terrible place to be. Even for me at 6'3", there's also rear vents and USB ports. And then the cargo area too, while not very long, is nice and cube shaped, and then you can fold down the rear seats and you have a pretty flat area. The GTI seems to excel in most cabin related areas, even in the most affordable trim. And the 40th builds upon that with the best driving experience that the hatch can offer without forcing 40 grand plus of car into your driveway. On the road, the Mark 8 GTI provides exactly the sort of experience that you want. Under the hood, you're going to have a 2-liter turbocharged inline-4. It's VW's long-running EA888 engine. It's an iron block, it's direct injected, and it makes a boatload of low-range power with a peak of 271 pound-feet of torque, 241 horsepower. This thing pulls hard well into illegal territories. That's impressive. Now this is also offered with a 6-speed manual transmission, which has a slight rubberiness to it, but there is still a nice satisfying thunk into each gear. That's going to have a well-weighted clutch. It feels springy, but there's some feedback through the pedal. Gearing is on the tall side. You're past 60 at the top of second, but with this kind of torque, it feels potent. Getting up to speed is mostly about fighting wheel spin. The DSG should be quicker. It's a 7-speed that does come with a launch control. The paddle shifters respond nicely, and the shifts are both quick and smooth, surprisingly. The reason why the dual clutch didn't go faster was because I didn't have the Autobahn with stickier tires, and I was in the real world. It really just struggles to put the power down from a launch, but once you get going, this thing rapid fires gears. And while turbo lag is there, I'd still label this responsive, and passing thrust is plentiful. This engine feels relaxed, and the dual clutch is great at downshifting when necessary, so it feels ready at all times. I seldom use the manual mode as a result. I think if you're shopping in this segment, even if you're comparing it against things like the Elantra N, I don't think you're gonna find this short on power. It also makes kind of a nice snarl. Now the thing that holds this back the most is that this is front wheel drive. I've driven in the rain or even in the dry. It does have a hard time hooking up, but it does come with an eLSD that does help the thing put power down around the corners. While there is definitely understeer when you try to push the thing, it's surprisingly balanced. And the steering, unlike a lot of other VWs, has some feedback in here. We'll put it into sport mode. That's gonna keep our revs higher, keep us in that power band, and make it more reactive. The steering kind of firms up. It's still a lot of fun, very quick reacting. It's very light on its feet. Since this gives more of that feedback and there's no vagueness on center, it's more engaging to me than something like a WRX. I also find the weighting of the steering to be perfect, but the major standout feature for the 40th anniversary edition is that it gets the Autobahn's dynamic chassis control, which is adaptive dampening. I didn't think that the regular GTI had any problems performing, but as you bring it up to higher speeds, you can feel an extra level of flatness through here, a little bit more control, maybe less drama, but only in a good way. In sport mode, it eats smooth corners with a similar level of body motion as my GR Corolla, a car that comes with a more simple yet much harsher suspension. But a big pull to adaptive dampening is not just that you can make it more firm, it's also that you can make it more forgiving. Now the first thing that you will notice is that the steering becomes a lot more floaty here in comfort mode, but the suspension does do a pretty good job of insulating the really small imperfections. Like those are hardly ever coming into. I hear them That's really quite impressive. And there's still a certain level of firmness to it, but now it can hit some smaller to medium-sized potholes without it disturbing the cabin. Now, running the same road with it in sport, what you're really going to feel is the smaller imperfections and the bigger ones too, which communicates more to you, tells you what the road surface is like. It's pretty easy to notice the difference. Though the more crater-like obstacles will send a shudder through the cabin regardless. But honestly, unless the road was really torn up, I think even riding in sport mode, it's still a very livable car. At 65 miles per hour, this thing revs below 2,500 RPMs. It's gonna be quieter than most of the segment. It's also highly efficient and runs on regular fuel, something most of its competitors can't brag about either. There's also a low belt line and a big-ish windshield, improving visibility and helping this feel approachable. But I also want to address reliability. Thankfully, I'm having trouble finding reports of DCC or the shocks failing prematurely. However, the suspension is more expensive to replace. To me, the standard GTI was great, but after driving one with DCC, I'd jump for the adaptive setup unless I was planning on doing substantial modifications anyway. So the GTI, the Mark 7.5, was, for the most part, a pretty robust car. And the Mark 8 shares a lot with that previous gen. After initial turbo woes, some Mark 7 owners suffered coolant leaks, AC problems, and sunroof leaks. On the new one, there was a recall on the engine cover, which is why that's no longer there. A few people reported their radiators dislodging, but the main issue seems to be buggy infotainment and tech, which could be fixed over software updates, but that does raise questions for 10 years down the road. As far as VW goes, I think I would trust the GTI more than any of their other models. And I also like that this is still built in Germany. Make sure you're staying on top of the maintenance. Do not listen to the 10,000 mile oil change interval, and if you have the DSG, do the recommended DSG service. While being multifaceted is a big pro to a lot of sport compacts or hot hatches, I think the GTI does it just about better than anyone else. And I think the more straightforward 40th anniversary edition still comes with all the nice features to make it an accommodating car, combined with the dynamic chassis control that makes it a better handling hatch in all scenarios, without a spooky price tag. If VW could grow past their unhealthy obsession with making insufferable electronics, in my opinion, this trim, this generation, would be peak GTI. It has all the comfort, handling, fun, and convenience I could ever want from a vehicle that starts under 35 grand. If you want a hot hatch or sport compact, this deserves serious consideration. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed the video, then leave a like to help me harness the mysterious YouTube algorithm. Subscribe and hit the bell for more, and follow me on Patreon for an additional podcast. I'll catch you in the next one.